My name is Amy Howard. Today I want to answer the question of what is dust, or specifically, what is dust of ages? Many of you don't know, but years ago I was an art history major, a fine arts, and a business major. And I used to take my children to museums to try to show them the different paintings and decorative arts and explain them basically what I was studying myself. And so what I would show them is on those paintings that were so incredible from the 17th and 18th century were these beautiful gilded frames. And down in the crevices of those gilded frames were dust of the ages. Not only is that something that you'll find on a well patinaed antique, it's something that you can add that will literally change the look of the wax that you're going to be adding in the antiquing process with our products. So maybe when you're pulling your things together and you're going to be working on a project, think about what that piece is going to look like. You're going to decide on what color you want to do it in. You're going to decide whether or not you're going to make it look old or not. If you're painting a piece to go in your nursery, or you're painting a piece that's maybe going to go in your child's room, you may not want to antique it. So I would suggest using just a clear wax or no wax at all. Or you might use the light antique wax without the dark wax. So there's all these different looks and colors and techniques that you can incorporate together, so it becomes literally a process. So what we want to talk about today specifically, what does the dust do, and do I need to get it for my project? If you're going to be using light wax, dark wax, you're more than likely going to use the Dust of Ages project. So let me just kind of show you what that looks like. This is a piece of trim. As you know, I use a lot of pieces of trim to decide on what color palette I want to use, what my piece is going to look like, and that if I look at it, if I've done it and I'm very happy with it, then I go and I replicate this look on my piece of furniture or cabinetry. So this is a Toscana milk paint finish. It's very synonymous with looking very old, very worn, even where I've come down and scrubbed literally to the original stain on this piece. You see how the Dust of Ages just goes in the crevices on this egg and dart design and makes it look really old. The fun thing about it is I want to be able to show you just on a regular piece of trim that I painted with the black one step how it will change the patina. One thing that's so great about working with a chalk-based paint like our one-step paint, it's not like making your own. It's not like you've gone back in and used latex paint and added a tile grout. It literally has the calcium carbonate in it, which is chalk, and it allows it to be able to accept, and what you add on top draws down into the paint itself. So that's why adding the wax and the dust together literally transforms your finish. So let me show you what I'm talking about. On this project, I'll have my light wax first. So I'm going to take my round hog hair brush, offload it onto my cardboard, come on top of my piece of trim all over. It's going to be 100% coverage. Make sure you pounce down in the crevices, because that way you want to make sure that's what's going to hold the Dust of Ages in your piece. Now, it's really important, and I've talked about this on other videos with waxing, feel of the wax on your piece. When you first apply it, it's very greasy and it's moving around. That's not the time to apply the dust. You've got to wait till your light antique wax comes to tack before you add the dust. If you're working on a lighter color, let's say a Bauhaus buff or a pale French blue or a light metropolitan gray, if you put on the light antique wax and you don't wait until it comes to tack or it's dry enough to put on the dust is going to go black on you, and that's not desirable. We want it to stay that same beautiful gray color. So I'm going to fan this just a little bit because I'm showing you I want it to come to tack. And I want it to be down in the crevices, but I do want to make sure that it's not too wet. Now, because of the dark antique wax is really not going to show up that much, but I do want to add a little bit of detail onto my gold leaf striping that I did right here. So I'm going to take my brush, dip it into my China bristle. You'll notice that I went over to a flat China bristle brush. I'm not going to use around hog hair when I add dark wax. Now, I want you to see how much of the dark wax I'm going to take off. See how I'll turn it a lot because I want to make sure those little sneaky areas of dark wax in that brush get off. I'm going to come back and I'm just going to pounce on top of my gold leaf. Kind of feather it out a little bit. What it does, adding that dark wax to gold leaf just sets it back. It makes it a little bit more subtle. And if you want to wear it before you put the wax on, come back with a little 4/0 steel wool and wear through and allow some of that finish, maybe a color that you painted underneath your leaf, will start to peek through. We'll have another video on gilding that you want to watch, and we'll go over that whole process of antiquing gold. So now I'm ready to add my Dust of Ages. Now, you are going to need to get a clean brush. Don't use a brush that you've used for wax. I want you to use a China bristle brush. Dip the brush down into the dust. Offload it just a little bit. And if you're sensitive to dust and things like that, make sure you wear just a little dust mask. You can do this outdoors. You want to make sure that you have proper ventilation. And then you're going to come back and I'm going to pounce it. I'm going to pounce this down in the crevices like this. And you can see how generous I am with it. If you want to, before you actually buff it, you can take the dust and take some of the excess and put back in the container. A lot of people will say, well, can I dust it off my table and put it back in there? Absolutely. All right, so now I want you to be able to see this piece of trim here. It's got the dust all over it. My light antique wax came to tack. And now I have two options. We call it grinding or we call it just buffing. If I take the brush that I used with my dust and I literally press it down into the finish and literally grind it down into it like this, it allows that dust to just literally meld with the wax and with the chalk-based paint. That's what can make the finish so beautiful and so rich looking. So you see, I'm literally starting to kind of buff it as I'm grinding it down in here. Then I'm going to come back with a lint-free rag. And I'm just going to buff the top. I love telling people this in my workshops when I teach. I'll ask people what they do for a living. And if they say they're a computer operator or IT person or they're very technical or an accountant, that's when they love to get this rag and they take their finger and they want to be able to go around on the piece of furniture and get that dust off. I don't want you to do it that way. I really want you to use a pad like this, because when you're buffing this dust off and you're using the pad, that way it's only going to take the dust off on the top. We want the dust to stay down in the crevices. That's what's going to give it that beautiful detail. So the dust does a couple of things. If you're working on a project that you're going to use the light wax all over, you're going to use the dark wax just for highlighting, you want to use the Dust of Ages to be able to bring that detail out. Let's say you're working on some kitchen cabinet doors and you don't have a lot of egg and dart or acanthus design on this like this piece of trim does. But you're probably going to have some raised paneling. And then the other thing is it's going to get in that paint that's on that flat surface area and give it a lot of depth. It's amazing the difference that you're going to see that it's going to make. So then I'm going to come back just on this acanthus part, buff that off. I want to make sure that I'm not getting too much out though of the crevices. And now because I'm buffing on top, I'm starting to see what that wax is offering me. It's giving me a patina. So on a piece of furniture that would have worn over a period of time, let's say hundreds of years, and our hands have, with oil on it, have rubbed it and gone over it over a period of time, we call that patina. So that's what we're creating. The Dust of Ages is allowing us to be able to do that and give it depth. So hopefully that will allow you to be able to make a decision. Do I need dust or do I not? I love it because I love what it adds to my patina, whether I'm working with milk-based paints or our one-step. So remember, now it's your turn to go enjoy the bragging rights.